Okay. All right. Well, today we have Kelly Breer is a staff attorney with the Kansas Legal Services in the Kansas City, Kansas office. In addition to assisting clients through the Parent Advocate Program and the Victim of Crimes Act grant, Kelly's mission is to build a disaster preparedness and advocacy program that will provide immediate critical legal assistance to Kansans impacted by disaster. So we are really excited for this presentation today on weathering the storm, supporting unhoused Kansans through legal aid in times of disaster. Let me get her slides up. And thank you, Kelly, so much for doing this presentation today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kelly Breer, and I'm here today to talk about the Disaster Preparedness and Advocacy Program that we are envisioning for our expansion of our mission at KLS. A little bit about KLS is we are a statewide nonprofit law firm that provides legal services to low-income Kansans all over the state in all 105 counties. We have 11 offices. We have about 49 attorneys, and applicants can apply for our services online or by telephone. We have help centers set up in various counties at certain times of the month that they can come in and either make an appointment or do a pop-in visit, and we can try to help them with their civil needs. Some examples of the services we provide would be landlord tenant and housing rights, representing victims of domestic violence in divorces, parentage matters, child custody, protections from abuse, protections from stalking. We also have expungement clinics, and we provide free forms on our website that are very helpful for self-represented litigants who are going to file divorce on their own or file a motion to modify custody. But our forms are very user-friendly and helpful, and they are on our website. We also have a grant that we have for advocating for veterans who maybe are on the cusp of being homeless. So that is, I think, a relatively new grant, but that's another opportunity that we have to help our unhoused or homeless population. So the development and implementation of this disaster preparedness and advocacy program is kind of what I'm focusing on right now at Kansas Legal Services. All right, next slide, please. So disaster preparedness and advocacy. It's important to stockpile first aid kits and water, but that's not all that we should be doing right now, especially in light of all of the natural disasters that we've all been watching on CNN for the past few months. What we need is a solid plan in place, and that would be this program to address immediate legal needs after a disaster hits. A lot of these clients would be people who've lost, legal resources, and we need to develop and maintain some continuity of services that we can provide across the state in each of our 11 offices to any of our unhoused residents who've been impacted by a natural disaster. So the preparedness part is the part where we develop a solid game plan to make sure we can still function individually and as a community once a disaster hits. The advocacy piece is the piece that comes into play after the storm hits, when we are helping people navigate FEMA claims, maybe we're fighting unlawful evictions, helping people replace important legal documents. So we need to have an infrastructure in place to help. And if we don't have one in place when the next big disaster hits, then we're already too late. So our focus in developing this program is, first of all, getting funding through disaster grants or other funding resources, recruiting and training our in-house attorneys and pro bono attorneys who are interested in helping our unhoused and other residents who are impacted by a disaster. Developing and distributing some brochures and materials that we can distribute to our community partners who can then distribute them to our residents who may need help. Things like know your rights in this situation or that situation. We want to develop basically a legal triage system that would be uniform across the board. I did a training with the American Red Cross a year ago or so, and it was very helpful because the person leading the training took volunteers to pretend that we were intake people. So I did that, and they had this really slick worksheet, and you basically would have a conversation with the person who was in distress and just check all the boxes of the places and people they needed to see. So, and then you would give them their paper and they would go find the table or the representative to ask their question or get their assistance. So I would love to have something like that developed that we could just distribute to all of our offices. And if and when a disaster hits, we were all operating on the same page. Let's see, next slide, please, Kayla. Okay, so not surprisingly, our unhoused residents are especially vulnerable to natural disasters. And why is that? There's lots of reasons, most of which is physical exposure, limited resources, social marginalization, and inadequate access to emergency services. So as we know, a lot of our unhoused neighbors sleep in public spaces, which could include parks, or they may sleep in tents or makeshift shelters, little or no protection against the disasters that most likely are going to hit Kansas. So tornadoes, flooding, extreme temperatures. And a lot of unhoused people tend to live near rivers, which, as we know from the hill country, is obviously incredibly dangerous and can be catastrophic. Under bridges in low-lying areas, so areas that are very prone to flash flooding. So first of all, where they are and how they are housed or unhoused is the first thing. The second one is just that they would have limited access to emergency alerts and preparedness resources. So there's going to be a communication gap. Emergency shelters and evacuation orders and weather warnings and the alerts are usually communicated to the community through smartphones, televisions, radios, and these are devices that a lot of our unhoused residents don't have consistent access to. So it may be too late for them to get help by the time they hear about or experience the disaster. Also, a lack of emergency supplies. A lot of our unhoused neighbors often don't have flashlights, first aid kits, or portable weather radios. Another issue that makes them more vulnerable is transportation or lack thereof and mobility challenges. So a lot of our unhoused individuals don't have reliable transportation. They may also suffer from physical disabilities, chronic illness, or mental health conditions that limit their mobility. And it may make it difficult or impossible for them to respond appropriately to a disaster or an emergency alert or a shelter in place or an evacuation order. And then barriers to shelter access could involve anything from overcapacity of shelters, and or they could have an aversion to shelters based on their own mistrust or maybe a traumatic incident that they may have experienced with a person of authority. Maybe they've been in shelters that require certain documents that they don't have, and so they feel like that's not an option for them when maybe it is. Some shelters are going to have sobriety rules also. That may be a barrier. And then health and safety risks after the disaster. Our unhoused neighbors are going to be especially vulnerable to illness and injury, both before and after a disaster. From the extreme temperatures, we're thinking it's going to be heat stroke, hypothermia, frostbite. They could have respiratory illnesses that stem from exposure to smoke, mold, pollution, and they could suffer injury from debris, falling objects, or structures that are collapsing. And because of their lack of health insurance potentially and lack of transportation to clinics or hospitals, they're going to naturally experience an unnecessary delay in getting medical treatment if they are even able to do so. Another disproportionate impact for them would be on recovery. A lot of these unhoused obviously don't have insurance or don't have any kind of financial safety net. They have no savings or means to recover or replace lost items. Disasters will likely destroy what possessions they do have. And because they may not have required identification documents, proof of residency, or a mailing address, they may be barred or excluded from certain aid programs. The social and institutional neglect is another systemic issue that unhoused individuals face. They are rarely or never specifically accounted for in local emergency management plans. This can result in inadequate response strategies that fail to reach them altogether. Due to the stigmatization of being unhoused, they are deprioritized during a disaster triage, or again, they may face discrimination when they're trying to access services. So because the unhoused needs are often overlooked in both planning and response efforts, then we need to get with our community partners to strategize how we can best create outreach programs, how we can get mobile alerts geared toward the unhoused, how we can have more shelters with fewer restrictions in times of disaster. So these are just some things that would be a work in progress as we brainstorm how best to reach our unhoused residents and help them in times of disaster. Next slide, please. So, what legal services can we actually provide to our unhoused residents? The first type would be what we consider to be direct legal services. So that would be what it kind of sounds like. It would be, maybe a face-to-face at an intake table and vetting what their issues are and either representing them in some sort of housing matter or help them get access to an emergency shelter, maybe defend against some kind of unlawful eviction or encampment sweep that maybe was not done on the up and up, defend against discrimination by shelters, and basically just enforce whatever rights they may have that are being compromised. Another direct legal service is that we could help them fill out applications for FEMA relief or other public benefits. We could then most likely appeal the denials of those applications. We can help them replace lost legal documents. They may not have had those to begin with, but in a disaster, maybe that pushes that issue to the front lines, and we could work with them to try to get a replacement of their important documents, which may then help them have better access to housing. There's also some criminal legal support, if you will, that we can help with. I know we have expungement clinics periodically around the state. Those have been very successful and highly regarded by our judges and communities, and it helps people who are burdened with these, nonviolent old convictions that they can potentially get wiped off their record, which then gives them better access to better jobs, better housing, maybe a better custody plan for their kids. Just it gives them kind of a clean slate and a fresh start. So those are other things that we can help with. Then our next type of legal services would be what would be more indirect. And that's going to be more like the brainstorming and the vision that we are working on right now. So maybe setting up legal clinics that are dedicated to disaster advocacy. So that would probably look like a disaster hits somewhere in Kansas, and our team goes to the site of that disaster and sets up shop, and we just do triage, legal triage for people, as many people as we can see. It would be ideal to have a mobile intake unit that we could use to drive to these locations, and then our applicants would potentially have, a temperature controlled, safe space to come into and talk with us, and we could go over how we can help them. Another part of this plan would be to create and distribute education materials about, know your rights on housing and this kind of stuff. Making sure that those materials are multilingual so that they can reach as many people as possible. Again, partnering with our community organizations is going to be key. And then reaching out to recruit pro bono attorneys and staff who want to help their neighbors in times of disaster would be part of the plan as well. So it's not just about the emergency response, it's going to also be about long-term recovery and building resilience for the next inevitable disaster. So no legal service that we can provide during a disaster is going to be inconsequential. It could be us successfully appealing a FEMA denial because maybe someone just checked the wrong box, because maybe paperwork is not their strength. So it could be something like that. It could be something that seems basic, like getting a copy of their social security card or their birth certificate, but then that opens the door for them to benefits or housing or things like that. So there's big things and little things that we can do to help our neighbors facing disaster. And the butterfly effect of even the smallest service may actually change someone's life. So that's what we would like to see happen. Next slide, please, Kayla. So these are just a few of our community partners. And obviously, KSHC is also going to be one of our partners. And if there's anyone in the various groups that are watching this and you're not on that list, I'd love it if you would put in a chat so I can add you guys to my networking list. So if anyone could do that, that would be awesome. Basically, we're in the phase where I'm just trying to build my network and meet people who are also, like-minded and reaching out to the same folks. All right, so what can we all do to work together in times of disaster to prepare and be ready to help on site and after? Next slide, please. So the first one is going to be outreach and identification. To whatever extent your organizations can help identify ahead of time unhoused individuals that may be impacted by disaster, just maybe have their information handy and give them our information. Let them know that we're out there. A lot of people out there may not know that we're here to help them. So in times of disaster or not, you may have clients that we have grants that we can help them, and maybe they just don't know about it. So let's see, community organizations, let's all use our networks and work together to help these people. I know that faith-based groups, that act as intermediaries can be very, very helpful, because a lot of our unhoused residents are especially suspicious, I guess would be it. That can be something that they don't trust organizations that are coming in to theoretically help them. But if we have Catholic Charities connecting them with us or telling them that we're the good guys, that's always very helpful. Providing immediate support would be, legal first aid clinics, like I've talked about before, meal sites, disaster relief hubs, referring unhoused individuals to us for, again, helping them with access to benefits, lost IDs, things like that. For resource sharing, we can share information to coordinate services and avoid duplication of efforts. I know that we have 3 law schools in the region, at least, if not, I guess if you count Mizzou, that's 4. But there's always eager law students who are maybe participating in their clinics at school and are eager to help. So these are connections that we can make and reach out to those folks to see if they are in a position to help us help our neighbors. And then housing is obviously going to be the big ticket item. So as much as we can all work together and brainstorm to get these people into temporary or permanent housing, maybe facilitate access to short-term housing to at least get them through the immediate impact of the disaster. For public policy and systemic change, that's going to obviously be a little bit more broad, but the goal there would be to work together to address specific barriers like zoning, access to benefits, things like that. And education and legal navigation is going to be just us all hosting workshops and maybe having periodic meetings to brainstorm how we can all work together. I know that the volunteer organizations assisting in disaster is kind of what that looks like. It's a bunch of organizations that are in this space that work together and share ideas and that kind of stuff. So that can be at the national level, the local level, the specific disaster level. That can be as big or as small as it needs to be. All right, next slide. Okay, the driving principles and desired outcomes of a disaster preparedness and advocacy program. So equity and non-discrimination. That is going to be ensuring that unhoused individuals are not deprioritized or criminalized in disaster response efforts, and advocating for equal access to resources like shelters, healthcare, information. Human dignity and rights-based approach is going to be recognizing housing as a human right and promoting policies that uphold that dignity before, during, and after disasters. Community empowerment and participation is going to be including our unhoused residents in the planning and preparedness and response in disasters. So that could be, citizen review groups. I know that they're often excluded because of various reasons, but if they had a voice in planning for disasters, it would probably impact our infrastructure on how we reach them in a disaster. Intersectionality would be us addressing how race, gender identity, disability, immigration status, and mental health may affect their vulnerability and their access to services. And then prevention and resilience would be focusing on mitigation and preparedness, not just drinking out of the water hose once the disaster hits. So again, being ready, having a solid plan, and then we jump in and put out the fires. For legal justice and accountability, this would be maybe looking at our anti-camping ordinances and the sweeps that occur, holding public agencies accountable for disaster planning and response. I know there's a lot of that going on probably in Texas right now. So those are just 30,000 feet ideas of just things that we can all be thinking about as part of the bigger goal. Desired outcomes would be, creating access or better access for our unhoused residents to warning systems, emergency supplies, evacuation plans, and support networks. Ensuring that shelters accept people who have pets and partners, or mobility issues where appropriate in any of those scenarios. Be on the ready to defend in housing issues that may involve, illegal evictions from shelters or otherwise. Again, we can help them with direct services to get benefits, IDs, access to shelters. What else? Continuity of services, maintain access to medical care, social services, and mental health care during disasters. So a lot of that is going to just be the community partnerships where we are able to do that checklist. And if we know that someone needs any or all of those services, we all have a network in place where we can send our people to the various connections that can help them in their own way. Stronger social safety net. Basically, we need to use disaster response as an entry point with the long-term goal of helping these residents get long-term solutions that would make them obviously less vulnerable to natural disasters. So that is what I have. That's just some kind of the 30,000 feet. Does anyone have any questions? I will say I had a quote in there somewhere. I don't remember what slide, but it's something my husband always says. It's not it's who knows you. So let us know that you're out there, and that's what the chat is for. So I appreciate that, and what services you can help with, and then let other people know that we are out there. So if we all kind of spread the word, then we can better help. I think there's a chat or two. Kayla, do you mind helping me with that so I don't get all lost?
Yeah. So a question in the chat from Joy: Can KLS help with renters who now find themselves homeless with legal resources?
Maybe. I know it depends on the grants that we have in place. I know that Johnson County especially has some kind of grant where people get unpaid rent forgiven. I know I had a client that got like $3,500 or something wiped off her slate. So I don't know the particulars of that grant or the requirements, but I definitely think there's resources out there.
I do want, I'll chime in because I know KLS is doing an expungement clinic down here in Southwest Kansas, I believe this week. So other clinics that you guys do also coincide with helping our unhoused population, either getting the fines figured out for them to get their driver's license back, for them to get their ID, having those clinics, and they may not be specifically for our unhoused neighbors, but those definitely help remove some of those barriers, for potential renters or, people trying to get into services.
Definitely. Yeah. Again, it's that butterfly effect. It may seem like, a no big deal putting in a couple hours at a clinic, but the impact on someone's life for helping them get these things cleared or getting their license back can be, monumental.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Joy had a question about insurance. What was that?
says, what if people have home or renter's insurance? Can KLS help with fighting the insurance companies get paid?
Yes, I think we could do that. We've had a few people call in who were impacted by either the Westmoreland tornado or there were some pretty severe straight line winds and thunderstorms a few months ago. I can't remember where. Um, and they were getting denials from their insurance companies. And unfortunately, some of the denials were legitimate. So it was a matter of getting copies of the policies and reading them and having to explain to the applicant that actually, yeah, this is probably not something that you can have any recourse on. But I know that we can help them reach out to the Kansas Insurance Commission. I know they field complaints on, you know, incidents like this where people feel like they're getting wrongfully denied coverage, and maybe they are, but maybe they're not. But some people don't even know that they can go online or call. And yeah, Michelle, yeah, that's right. Depends on the region and the case. Yeah. So yeah, we can help people get to where they need to go. The Kansas Insurance Commission is pretty helpful. I know that most of our unhoused people are not going to be dealing with contractors, but I know the Attorney General's office, their Consumer Protection Division is ready to help out with things like that. So there's just some resources out there that maybe we know about that they don't because they're in the middle of it and overwhelmed. So a lot of it is just getting them where they need to go and then having them keep us updated. I know that Dominic in our Manhattan office, I don't remember all the particulars, but we had someone call in who lived in a mobile home, and it was something involving these horrible storms in Junction City last year. I can't remember when. But anyway, her mobile home that she rented was completely destroyed, completely uninhabitable, but yet she had to keep living in it. So she literally had a tree coming up through like the bathtub of one of the bathrooms. And the door was so wet that it was like a sponge. And her landlord basically completely blew her off because he thought she had no power and was not interested in helping her. And she was living in disgusting circumstances. And she went in to see Dominic, and he helped her write some notice and, rattled the cage a little bit. And then before she knew it, the landlord was putting her in a brand new unit and at a reasonable rate. So, that's just what can happen when someone is advocating for you, even if it's an attorney picking up the phone and calling somebody. Sometimes that can open doors. It shouldn't be that way. People should be able to do this on their own and be treated with dignity and respect and be given the same opportunities that a phone call from an attorney can provide. But if not, that's what we're here for. So I know Dominic had an excellent result, and she was very, very grateful. So hopefully we'll get more people like that. A lot of times, these landlords in these mobile home parks, are bullies, and they don't feel like they have any skin in the game. And as far as helping their residents or whatever. So is there did I see another question or no? I know Michelle Davis pointed out that, yeah, a lot of what we can do or resources available just depend on the county and what's going on in each individual claim.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that just to kind of put it in perspective, here in the call center, we do average over 100 calls per day. In fact, last month I checked, we were averaging 132 calls every single day. And keep in mind, that's 52 weeks a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we only have so many resources available. And we've turned away almost 3,000 people this year. Having said that, we really try our very, very best to provide referrals, as you mentioned, Kelly, some of those. And we try to provide the referrals based on the particulars, of their need, whether it be insurance or something else. So we do try our best to refer people to good resources. I just wanted to put that out there. With all the amazing work Kansas Legal Services does, we don't have the capacity to help everyone, and maybe letting people know that when you ask them to call us will help them understand there might be limitations.
Yep, I agree. I'm glad you guys are able to kind of triage on the front lines like that. That's helpful. Any other questions or comments? Anybody want to chime in on any ideas you have for working with us or other organizations to reach unhoused residents in times of disaster or otherwise? I think Joy had chatted that there may be a clinic or two coming up that might be helpful to some of your people.
Yep, we're having a driver's license clinic in Garden City on Friday. And then we're having an expungement clinic in Horton, Kansas on July 15th.
Okay, are those walk-in or do people have to make appointments? How does that work?
We prefer appointments, but they could walk in.
Okay,
We have some more. We have some more clinics coming up too.
Okay. And then Joy, I'll get with you offline, but I meant to tell you Donovan County would be interested in having an expungement clinic. So I'll get with you on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any comments or anything?
I feel like I'll definitely be reaching out to you later as we're hearing there's some, bills probably being introduced at the next session about, removing people who may be camping down through some of the rivers throughout Kansas. And watching your presentation about disaster preparedness in that instance, I think will kind of help us make a plan on how to safely remove those encampments and definitely get your input on that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. And I did go to a national conference in May, National Volunteer Organizations Assisting in Disasters. And so maybe I have some contacts from that conference in other states, but it's all the same stuff that I could also connect you with. So that would be good. Definitely reach out to me and I'll go through my notes and my business cards that I picked up at that conference to see who might be able to help.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Kelly?
Has everybody been doom scrolling the Texas Hill Country stuff? I mean, I feel like I've logged 40 hours. I cannot wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Hey, Kelly, I'm sorry. Can you discuss how organizations can be prepared for disasters or issues like that, so they know where all their employees are and to keep everything going? Is there any disaster planning for organizations that they need to take in advance?
I don't have that sorted out in my head yet, but that would probably be something where that's all about us sharing ideas so that each organization is prepared in their own way. Yeah, I think that would look different for each organization depending on what services they provide. But yeah, I'm sure there would be some of the same preparation across the board.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then someone wants to know where the clinic in Horton is going to be held.
Oh, is that? Wait a minute. Let me see. Hold on a second. It's going to be at the casino. If that helps, in the bingo hall. I can send the address.
Right.
Yeah, I can send the address to Kayla.
That would work.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone have any inside scoop or intel about the Hill Country stuff?
Just devastating. I
I
think
know.
I've been sobbing all week.
It's just unimaginable. And actually, I went to school in Texas, and my best friend from college, her daughter went to Camp Mystic like 8 summers in a row. And so it's this time of year when I would always be seeing the Facebook pictures of the reunions and all that. So I've kind of been getting some information from her. It just sounds just horrific. So
I thought I was doing fine and I dropped my kid off at camp and never
yeah,
am bothered by that this last
yeah.
week for a week at
Mm.
camp and just like left sobbing.
Oh my God.
I was just
Yeah.
like those poor parents and kiddos and oof.
It's just the worst. Yeah, I know. I was thinking, like, when is the last time that something felt like this? And then I finally figured out it was Sandy Hook. Like, I haven't felt like this since that happened. Yeah, sad lessons about budget cutting federal agencies from Dennis. Yep. Going to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking on all that stuff. Oh, there's the address for the Golden Eagle Casino. So yeah, so I've been trying to watch as many of those press conferences as I can, and I've actually been pretty impressed with, their disaster folks and how they've responded to the press and all that at the local level anyway. So it's been interesting to kind of watch that unfold. But obviously, so horrible. Anybody else have any other questions? I think we've covered the clinics that are coming up. Got contact information from folks. And then obviously feel free to reach out to me. If I'm not the person you need, I can maybe help you find whoever that would be. There's a specific need for help on the legal side, whether it be family or housing or benefits or whatever it may be. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This really was a great presentation and we appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you. And yeah, Kayla, please reach out to me about that situation. I'll try to help you or connect you with people.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.